Welcome back. Today we're exploring a chilling case that shook Knoxville, Tennessee in 2016, one that still reverberates through the tight-knit community and beyond. As the prosecutor said during the trial, he made a choice in the dark of night to steal a young life and shatter a family's world. Those words would linger in the minds of everyone who followed the story, and they set the tone for a tragedy that felt both surreal and heartbreakingly real. It's a case that many in the area still struggle to talk about without trembling voices and tearful eyes. A case involving a promising young cheerleader named Emma Walker and her ex-boyfriend William Riley Gaul, a once celebrated college football player who would become infamous for the violence he inflicted from just outside her bedroom wall. This crime was not just a headline. It was a wound on the community's sense of safety. In the early morning hours of November 21, 2016, a single gunshot cracked the cold night air. The bullet tore into the Walker family home, through the wall of a quiet suburban bedroom, and into the peaceful darkness where Emma Walker, 16, slept. Moments later, an unimaginable horror. Emma, a beloved student, daughter, friend, lay mortally wounded. The news spread quickly once morning light broke over the modest suburban streets. By midday, messages of shock and grief flooded social media feeds and local airwaves. The close-knit neighborhoods of northwest Knoxville, normally preoccupied with school sports, block parties, and church gatherings, were instead bracing themselves to learn what happened. That week, a spontaneous memorial took shape. Students from Emma's high school, many still in their cheer uniforms and football jerseys, placed flowers, candles, and handwritten notes beneath photos of her smiling face. Church leaders hosted prayer vigils, as hundreds of people, many of whom had never met her, arrived to pay their respects. Her funeral drew an overflow crowd, some standing silently in the back of the chapel, many crying softly. Mourners described a hush that fell over the entire service, as though everyone was holding their breath. Outside, the November wind carried leaves across the parking lot, as if nature itself mourned. Many people stared at a lifeless form on the pavement, as if nature itself mourned. Emma Walker was not just another victim. She was a kind, driven young woman whose promise extended far beyond the classroom and cheerleading squad. Her sudden, violent death left a void that people struggled to put into words. Strangers left small notes at her school. "We miss you, Emma. You're in God's hands now. And fly high, angel." The pain cut deep, but so did the resolve. This community would not forget Emma Walker. Her name would be invoked in classrooms discussing healthy relationships, in living rooms warning about stalking and control, and in courtrooms where justice would be demanded. The case would raise questions about teenage violence, the warning signs of obsessive behavior, and the responsibilities of bystanders and institutions. Before we delve into the specifics of that fateful night, let's remember Emma for who she was at 16. A devoted daughter, a loyal friend, a student who lit up every room she entered, and a cheerleader who soared with grace and confidence. Her face became iconic in Knoxville news coverage over the following weeks. A smiling reminder of what was lost. Now, let's go back before the tragedy and understand the life she lived, the dreams she held, and the world in which she was so cruelly taken. Emma Walker was born in March 2000. At the time of her death, she was 16 years old and already well known in her community. She lived with her parents, Mark and Jill Walker, and her younger brother, Evan. The family had settled in a comfortable single-story home in a suburban enclave west of Knoxville. The neighborhood was quiet, family entrepreneur, and known for good schools. Emma's parents had chosen the area specifically for the educational opportunities and the safety that this community promised. From a young age, Emma was drawn to activities that emphasized teamwork, dedication, and performance. She began cheerleading in middle school, quickly gaining a reputation for her high energy and athletic flair. Friends recall how she could perform flips, handsprings, and jumps with effortless grace. But Emma was more than a cheerleader. She was also a conscientious student. Teachers described her as attentive, curious, and empathetic. She was the kind of student you looked forward to having every year, said one of her favorite teachers at Central High School. She asked questions, engaged with the material, and brought a positive energy that lifted everyone around her. And here's what she had to say about the last class of her semester. Emma's daily routine might have seemed typical, but it was infused with her personal touches. She woke early, often before sunrise, to style her hair and perfect that signature cheerful smile. She loved practicing new cheer routines in front of her bedroom mirror, working tirelessly to master a new move before performing it for her squad. She was also fond of taking short walks through the neighborhood with her dog, pausing to chat with neighbors who found her warmth and manners refreshing. After school, she often stayed late for cheer practice. In between, she juggled homework, social activities, and volunteering at a local animal shelter. Those who knew her say her compassion for animals reflected her kind soul. When she had free time, Emma was known to bake cookies for her friends, sugar cookies with frosting, a treat that turned study sessions into mini celebrations. She was active online too, maintaining a lively Instagram feed where she posted photos with friends at football games, selfies in her cheer uniform, and snapshots of the family's summer vacations at nearby lakes. Her online presence radiated positivity. Her social media accounts showed a teenage girl in love with life, excited about the future. She rarely posted anything negative, preferring inspirational quotes over teenage drama. Switching lines, she said, "Now that I'm in my 50s and with all this..." Emma had big dreams. She once mentioned wanting to become a neonatal nurse, drawn to the idea of caring for newborns who needed special attention. Her friends say that her caring nature extended to anyone who was suffering. "If you were upset, Emma would sit with you until you felt better," recalled one close friend. She wouldn't leave your side. Her supportive presence wasn't limited to her immediate circle. She volunteered to tutor younger students struggling with math or English, and she dedicated time to charitable drives organized by her church youth group. Teachers predicted a bright future, perhaps a college scholarship for cheerleading or academics, a promising career in healthcare, and maybe even a leadership role in community organizations. The last known normal day in Emma's life was Sunday, November 20, 2016. According to her family's recollections, the day started calmly. She attended a morning church service with her parents and brother. The weather that day was crisp and partly cloudy, typical for a late Tennessee autumn, with temperatures hovering in the mid-50s. In the afternoon, she practiced a few cheer routines in the backyard. Her mother remembers Emma's laughter echoing through the house as the family prepared dinner. Emma scrolled through her phone, chatting with friends, excited about upcoming holiday plans. That evening, she watched a TV show on the couch, texted a few friends goodnight, and went to her bedroom, her sanctuary, where the glow of her phone's screen was the only light as she drifted off, presumably dreaming about the future. In the hours before tragedy struck, she might have been thinking about the next pep rally, the upcoming holidays, or what she'd wear to the next football game. Photographs taken in the days prior show Emma looking radiant in her cheer uniform, posing with classmates in front of a school banner. Videos from a recent pep rally, shot on friends' phones, capture her mid-routine, smiling broadly, encouraging the crowd to join in the school spirit. In every captured moment, she is alive, vibrant, and looking forward. Knoxville itself provided the backdrop to this story. With a population just under 200, 000 at the time, it was large enough to hold multiple high schools, shopping centers, and cultural spots, yet small enough that communities formed strong bonds and reputations traveled fast. The city sat nestled near the Great Smoky Mountains, and in late November, the leaves had mostly fallen, leaving gray branches outlined against a wintry sky. Central High School, where Emma was enrolled, was a point of pride for the community. Residents would gather on Friday nights under the glow of stadium lights, cheering on their teams, forging a sense of unity through sports and extracurricular activities. The Walker home was located in a quiet, family-friendly enclave known for its proximity to parks and a popular church that hosted community events. There wasn't anything overtly remarkable about the streets. typical mid-size American suburbia, except for the sense of warmth and neighborly cooperation that families valued. Landmarks in the area included local diners where residents caught up over coffee, a handful of strip malls offering basic services, and several churches where many families found spiritual guidance. The weather in November often hovered between brisk and mild, with occasional rain showers sweeping through. On the night of the crime, the sky was clear, the moon pale, and the temperature had dropped into the 40s. Street lamps cast a quiet glow, illuminating still yards and the winding roads. Maps of the area show a patchwork of suburban streets, each cul-de-sac ending in well-manicured lawns and tidy driveways. It was a place where front porch lights were left on after sunset as a friendly beacon, and where neighbors felt secure letting their children walk a block or two after dinner. The Walker family was well established in this environment. Mark Walker worked as a manager at a local business supply company, while Jill Walker was a stay-at-home mom who often volunteered at the school's front office and helped coordinate church events. Evan, younger than Emma by about 2 years, looked up to his sister, admiring her popularity, her kindness, and her knack for balancing academics with extracurricular life. Their home was modest but comfortable, a place where family dinners were routine, chores were divided fairly, and laughter was common. The Walkers were not wealthy by any stretch, but they were stable middle class and respected in the neighborhood. They attended community gatherings, supported local fundraisers, and contributed to their church's outreach programs. Mark and Jill were known to neighbors as attentive, loving parents who kept a close eye on their children's activities without being overbearing. They monitored Emma's social media usage, asked about her friends, and encouraged her academic and athletic pursuits. Recent family events included a small celebration of Emma's good performance on a test and Evan's success in a local soccer tournament. They had visited grandparents over the summer, traveling a few hours by car to spend quality time with extended family. The grandparents adored Emma. She would help them around the house and listen attentively to their stories of the past. The family dynamic was healthy. Arguments were small and resolved quickly, often about trivial teenage matters like curfew or phone time. The Walkers valued honesty and open communication, so Emma never felt the need to hide major aspects of her life from them. They were not aware of the extent of the tension between Emma and her ex-boyfriend William Riley Gaul, though they had certainly noticed some distress in her demeanor in the weeks leading to the tragedy. Had they known how serious the situation was, they would have intervened immediately. Instead, they trusted Emma's judgment. The family's good standing in the community meant people instinctively rallied around them when tragedy struck, offering casseroles, prayers, and shoulders to cry on. In the days leading up to the crime, subtle signs hinted at a brewing storm. Emma had broken up with Riley Gaul a few weeks before. He was a freshman football player at Maryville College, about 20 miles from Knoxville. During their relationship, Riley had earned a place of trust within the Walker household, but as time passed, friends of Emma observed controlling behaviors that set off quiet alarms. He would send her text messages at all hours, demand to know where she was and who she was with. After the breakup, Emma's demeanor changed. She was on edge, according to close friends. On her last day, that Sunday, nothing seemed off. She appeared cheerful, as if moving on with her life. But behind her smile, some uncertainty may have lingered. On the evening of November 20, 2016, Emma's final hours were unremarkable enough to fade into background noise. She texted a friend around 10:15 p.m., discussing an upcoming test in chemistry class. Her last social media post that night was a simple goodnight snap to a friend's group chat, accompanied by a sleepy emoji. No one suspected that outside, in the quiet darkness, a figure might have been lurking. Surveillance cameras from a neighbor's house captured a flicker of movement around 3 a.m. on November 21, just a shadow crossing a patch of lawn. The temperature had dropped, and dew was forming on mailboxes and cars parked in driveways. No one reported hearing the shot that would be fired soon after, or if they did, they mistook it for a distant car backfiring. In the aftermath, when police pieced together the timeline, phone records revealed that Emma's phone had gone dark sometime after 2:45 a.m. Witness accounts were scant. A passing motorist vaguely recalled seeing a car idling nearby. Later, investigators would identify that car as belonging to Riley Gaul. The weather that night, clear and crisp, unfortunately allowed sound to carry softly but not distinctly. The only real witness to the horror unfolding would be the walls of the Walker home and the forensic evidence left behind. To understand how such a terrible act could occur, we must look at William Riley Gaul. He was 18 years old at the time of the crime. Raised in a nearby community, Riley came from a seemingly ordinary family. He attended the same high school as Emma before graduating a year earlier. Friends and former classmates remembered him as a shy but polite boy who had found a measure of identity through football. By turning to public health to solve the problem, Riley was able to make life-changing progress and perhaps emerged from the crisis as a stronger man, likely to inspire people and help make a difference in the world. On the field, he was known for persistence rather than star quality, but he worked hard and earned a spot on the Maryville College football team as a freshman. His education history was straightforward: solid, if unspectacular, grades, participation in team sports, and a circle of friends that included other athletes and classmates. Riley's home life appeared stable. His parents were middle-class, hard-working people who supported his athletic pursuits. Yet, close friends observed that Riley had a penchant for intense relationships. In the digital age, his online presence showed a mix of typical teenage interests, sports highlights, memes, occasional selfies, but also revealed a subtle pattern. When he dated Emma, his posts often referenced their relationship, sometimes in overly possessive tones. "Without you, I'm nothing," read one tweet posted a few months before the breakup. After Emma ended their relationship, Riley's posts became cryptic and darker in tone. Investigators found a series of deleted messages and DMs where Riley expressed desperation, claiming he would do anything to win Emma back. He had never faced serious legal trouble before. However, after the crime, old classmates would come forward with stories of how Riley struggled with insecurity and jealousy. One former teammate stated, "He took breakups hard. He'd sulk for weeks, always playing sad songs in the locker room. In person, he was quiet and brooding when upset. He had no known mental health diagnoses on record, but prosecutors later argued that he displayed stalking behaviors and a refusal to accept rejection." Riley's relationship with Emma began when she was a high school cheerleader and he was a year ahead, a football player at the same school. Their social circles overlapped. Initially, it seemed like a storybook teenage romance. Football player and cheerleader, one woman decided that she wanted to rescue her friends from danger. But as Emma's friends would testify, Riley became increasingly possessive. He criticized her outfits, questioned her friendships, and tried to isolate her. When she finally decided to end the relationship, he bombarded her with messages. At first, they were pleas for forgiveness and reconciliation. Later, they became more desperate. He threatened self-harm, insinuated that Emma couldn't live without him, and made unsettling statements hinting he might harm someone else if she didn't return to him. Psychological experts called to testify at trial pointed to behaviors consistent with what is now recognized as coercive control, an insistence on dominance, pervasive jealousy, and the inability to respect boundaries. Online searches on Riley's devices revealed he'd looked up how to win back an ex-girlfriend, then how to scare someone into talking to you, and chillingly, gun search terms. As a freshman at Maryville College, Riley told acquaintances he was having trouble sleeping and focusing on football. He started missing practices. On social media, he posted sad song lyrics. Friends at the college dorm said he talked incessantly about Emma and the breakup, asking for advice on how to get her attention again. Some tried to reassure him that he'd be fine, that he should move on. But Riley wasn't interested in moving on. He visited Knoxville more frequently under the guise of seeing old friends, but his true motive seemed to be checking on Emma's whereabouts. CCTV footage from nearby stores showed him lurking in the area. He even slipped anonymous notes under her door at one point, though that detail would only come out later. On November 20, the day before the crime, investigators believe Riley's mindset had darkened. Phone records showed repeated calls to Emma's number that went unanswered. Late that night, he messaged a friend, "I'm going to fix this once and for all." That friend would later testify in court, shaken and regretful that he hadn't reported the message to anyone. Riley reportedly retrieved a gun belonging to a family member, taken without permission, and set out for the Walker home. Prosecutors argued that he intended to scare Emma, fire shots into her home, and perhaps then rush in as a savior, or force a confrontation that would make her speak to him. Instead, he fired a deadly round that struck her as she lay in bed. The crime itself happened swiftly. Around 3:20 a.m. on November 21, 2016, investigators estimated that Riley stood outside the Walker home, near Emma's bedroom window. He aimed a 9mm handgun at the side of the house and pulled the trigger. The bullet ripped through the exterior wall, entered Emma's bedroom, and struck her as she slept. Another shot was fired moments later, possibly a panicked attempt or a misguided effort to stage a break-in scenario. Then silence. Riley fled, leaving Emma gravely wounded inside the silent home. She did not scream. She could not. By the time her parents discovered her unresponsive later that morning, the damage was done. Evidence at the crime scene was minimal at first glance. A small hole in the exterior wall near Emma's bedroom window, a spent shell casing in the yard. Police responding to the 911 call at approximately 6 a.m. immediately recognized that something very wrong had occurred. The Walker home, carefully maintained, now became a crime scene. Investigators photographed the bullet hole, searched the yard for footprints, canvassed neighbors. One neighbor's security camera footage revealed a blurred car idling nearby. Another camera, down the street, showed a figure in a hooded sweatshirt walking briskly at around 3:15 a.m. Phone records and digital evidence began to paint a clearer picture as the hours passed. Emma's phone contained no recent replies to Riley's messages. Riley's phone, once examined, showed that he had been in the vicinity of the Walker home at the time of the murder. Several witness accounts placed Riley near Emma's workplace in the weeks before, and a friend recalled that Riley had mentioned he was desperate to talk to her one last time. Weather conditions that night provided crisp, clear air, ideal for sound to travel but also for a perpetrator to slip away unseen. The moonlight and street lamps were insufficient to alert anyone of the danger. Physical evidence was crucial. Forensic experts matched the bullet that killed Emma to the gun recovered later from a friend of Riley's, who claimed Riley had asked him to dispose of it. The investigation began rapidly. Knoxville police responded immediately to the 911 call placed by Jill Walker after she tried to wake her daughter for school and found her unresponsive. Emergency medical services arrived at 6:12 a.m. and confirmed Emma had no pulse. By 7 a.m., detectives secured the scene, interviewed Mark and Jill, who were in shock and unable to comprehend the horror. Crime scene technicians photographed every detail: the positions of furniture in Emma's room, the trajectory of the bullet hole, the shell casing in the yard. Search efforts extended beyond the home. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, asking if anyone had heard or seen anything suspicious overnight. Most neighbors were asleep, but one mentioned noticing a dark sedan idling around 3 a.m. Another recalled a figure moving along the sidewalk. These leads prompted a review of any available surveillance footage. It was a painstaking process, sifting through hours of footage from multiple security cameras. Forensic analysis of the bullet hole indicated a firing position outside the bedroom window. Ballistic tests matched the bullet to a specific 9mm handgun. The break came when a friend of Riley's contacted police on November 22, stating that Riley had approached him to help dispose of a gun. Alarmed and confused, the friend had stalled, telling Riley he'd think about it. Now, faced with Emma's murder, the friend cooperated fully. This testimony, alongside Riley's suspicious behavior, allowed investigators to focus on him as the prime suspect. Community involvement fueled the investigation. News media ran the story prominently, with local anchors somberly announcing Emma's death and the shocking manner in which it occurred. Within days, social media exploded with posts calling for justice. Students at Central High School were interviewed. Some recalled Riley's presence at school events, his intense stare fixed on Emma. Others remembered Emma confiding that Riley wouldn't leave her alone. Online message boards filled with speculation. Quote, by November 23, police obtained a warrant for Riley's arrest. He was picked up at a relative's house, looking distraught and confused. Officer statements later described him as evasive at first, but, once confronted with the evidence, he attempted to spin a tale that he had been trying to protect Emma from someone else, that he had fired into the home to scare off a supposed intruder. None of it made sense. Forensic evidence, witness interviews, phone records, and Riley's own inconsistent stories combined to dismantle his defense before it even reached the courtroom. The legal proceedings began with Riley's arrest. He was charged with first-degree murder, among other counts. The arraignment took place at 9 a.m. on November 24 in a crowded courtroom. Media presence was heavy, cameras rolling as Riley appeared in an orange jumpsuit, hands shackled. The prosecution moved swiftly, laying out evidence to justify holding him without bond. Defense attorneys requested more time to review the evidence. Court proceedings lasted for months, with pretrial hearings examining the admission of digital evidence, text messages, and ballistics reports. Prosecutors introduced witness testimonies from Emma's friends, who recounted the threatening behavior Riley had exhibited after the breakup. Expert witnesses testified about the trajectory of the bullet, establishing that the shot was deliberately aimed at Emma's sleeping position. The defense tried to paint Riley as a troubled young man who only meant to scare, never to kill. They argued he was emotionally unstable, lacked intent, and was influenced by heartbreak and confusion. But the prosecution countered with one simple fact. He stood outside her window with a loaded gun and fired into her room. That action, they said, spoke louder than any excuses. During the trial, which took place in 2018, the jury heard from ballistics experts who connected the bullet to the handgun Riley had tried to dispose of. Forensic analysts explained the digital trail Riley left behind, texts and calls pleading, threatening, and finally going silent after the shooting. Witnesses described Emma's good character, her kindness, and her attempts to distance herself from Riley. The prosecution closed with an emotional statement. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate act by someone who could not accept that Emma Walker had a life beyond him. Riley himself took the stand at one point, shedding tears, claiming he never intended to hurt Emma. His defense team argued that he acted irrationally, without premeditation. Yet the evidence showed otherwise. Prosecution lawyers presented a meticulously documented timeline, including timestamps from security cameras, phone logs, and text messages. They reconstructed the final night of Emma's life, down to the minute, leaving the jury with a haunting image of Riley lurking outside her home in the pre-dawn chill, gun in hand. The verdict came after several hours of deliberation, guilty of first-degree murder. The judge pronounced a life sentence, ensuring Riley would face decades behind bars before the possibility of parole. Family members of Emma Walker wept quietly, holding each other as the magnitude of the decision weighed on them. The community watched from the gallery, relieved that justice had been served, but no less heartbroken that Emma was gone. There were no appeals that altered the outcome significantly. Riley remains in prison, the memory of his crime etched into the legal records. The impact and aftermath of Emma Walker's death spread far beyond her family home. The community was stunned. In the weeks after the verdict, local leaders organized forums on domestic violence and teenage relationship abuse. Schools invited counselors to speak to students, encouraging them to report signs of stalking or harassment. Emma's parents, though devastated, eventually found the strength to speak publicly, urging other parents to pay attention to warning signs and to take their children seriously when they say someone makes them uncomfortable or afraid. Media coverage examined the red flags missed, the subtle cues that something was wrong, behaviors that in hindsight appeared glaringly obvious. Legislative changes were discussed in Tennessee's state assembly, focusing on early intervention in abusive teenage relationships. While no major law was passed directly because of Emma's case, it fueled ongoing conversations about providing resources in schools for students experiencing harassment from peers or ex-partners. Memorial services were held yearly at Central High School, and Emma's cheer squad retired her uniform number. A small scholarship fund was established in her name, awarded each year to a student who exemplifies kindness, academic diligence, and community spirit. Qualities Emma embodied. Her family gave statements of gratitude to the community and the police department, acknowledging the collective efforts that brought justice. They also expressed hope that Emma's legacy would help prevent future tragedies. The long-term effects included heightened vigilance among residents. Parents became more involved in their teenagers' online lives, monitoring relationships and encouraging open dialogue. Churches and youth groups offered workshops on healthy communication and boundaries in dating. Mental health professionals reported an uptick in teenagers seeking help for relationship anxieties. Knoxville, once quietly confident in its suburban tranquility, learned a harsh lesson about hidden dangers lurking within seemingly ordinary lives. In time, the raw pain softened into a solemn memory. The Walker family, while forever changed, chose to honor Emma by living in a way that reflected her values. They volunteered more, reached out to those in need, and spoke at local events. Emma's friends graduated from high school, carrying her memory into their futures. Some pursued careers in social work, nursing, or psychology, citing Emma's story as motivation to help others. Social media campaigns emerged. Remember Emma, Stop Teen Abuse, and local influencers and educators spread awareness, using her story as a cautionary tale. Support systems sprang up, including a dedicated hotline at the school for reporting harassment or stalking behaviors. Teachers were trained to spot warning signs and intervene proactively. The tragic event led people to speak up rather than remain silent, to support one another in times of distress, and to protect those who might be vulnerable. The current status of Riley's incarceration remains a muted footnote. Behind bars, he lost the prestige he once enjoyed as a college football player. He is known now only for the life he took and the pain he caused. Emma Walker's story, however, lives on in the community she loved and that loved her back. Her name remains spoken in classrooms, at cheerleading practices, and during scholarship award ceremonies. It stands as a reminder that even in quiet suburbs, darkness can seep in through the cracks if people do not remain vigilant and compassionate. As we close this chapter, let's remember Emma Walker not as a victim defined by her end, but as a kind-hearted young woman who deserved a bright future. Her murder was a senseless act that taught a community difficult lessons about love, control, and violence. The implications are clear. We must recognize the signs of dangerous relationships, support those who feel trapped, and uphold justice wherever it's threatened. In doing so, we honor Emma's memory and ensure her death was not in vain. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. Leave a comment below. What do you think communities can do to prevent tragedies like this in the future? Have you witnessed warning signs in your own circles? Let's discuss and learn from these devastating experiences so that we can help someone else, somewhere, before it's too late. And if you found this story compelling, consider checking out similar cases that highlight the importance of early intervention in toxic relationships. The more we understand, the better prepared we are to prevent another haunting whisper through the wall.